Okay, so get this. We're diving into some, like, hidden gems from Jesus' life today.
Hidden gems.
Yeah, like those stories from the Urantia book that you don't always hear in Sunday school. We're talking paper 157 this time.
Ah, interesting choice.
Right. It's all about this crucial turning point in his ministry, but it starts with these really relatable moments.
Right, right. It's not just jumping into the miraculous stuff. It's showing us the human side of Jesus, too.
Exactly. Like, remember how the Pharisees were always on his tail?
Yeah.
But there's this almost awkward encounter at Zebedee's boat shop.
Oh, yeah, where Jesus is supposed to meet his family.
Yeah, and the Pharisees show up at Mary's house, messing up the whole plan.
You can totally picture that kind of frantic energy, like, he's supposed to be here. Where is he?
It makes you wonder if Mary had a secret signal or something. Pharisees are here, abort mission.
Right, like a first-century bat signal or something.
Exactly. But seriously, those little details make the whole story come alive.
Absolutely. They remind us that Jesus wasn't operating in a vacuum. This was a real place and time with real tensions.
And in real families, real relationships, trying to make things work. So anyway, back to the story. The Urantia book then gets into this interesting situation with temple taxes.
Yeah, that whole thing was kind of a big deal back then.
Yeah, wasn't it like a mandatory thing for Jewish males?
Right, but sometimes religious leaders could get exemptions.
So what happens? Jesus pulls out his get-out-of-tax-free card.
Not quite. The book says that he and his disciples get approached by a tax collector, and they're short on funds.
Oh, no. Awkward. So what do? Pass the hat.
Well, that's where things get a little, how do I put this? Intriguing?
Oh, you're killing me here. Spit it out.
Okay, so the book says that out of seemingly nowhere, a messenger arrives with baskets overflowing with fish.
Wait, a messenger? Like a divine delivery guy?
That's how it's presented in the book.
Okay, I'm hooked. What happens next?
They sell the fish, pay the tax, and everyone's left wondering what just went down.
I mean, talk about divine intervention. Or maybe just really good timing. It makes you think about how stories evolve over time, right?
Absolutely. It's
Yeah,
like that whole thing about the coin and the fish's mouth.
Do you think that came from something like this? A simple fishing story that got blown out of proportion?
Who knows? But it's interesting to consider how oral traditions and religious narratives can sometimes blend together.
Totally. And the Urantia book actually encourages that kind of critical thinking.
It does. It reminds us to be mindful of how stories can change over time, even with the best of intentions.
Which I think is a perfect segue to our next topic. Jesus' encounters with the Pharisees.
Oh, yeah. Get ready for some fireworks, because things are about to get interesting.
So we're leaving those big public showdowns and getting into those more private moments with the disciples.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Right. Like, what was Jesus teaching them behind closed doors?
Well, the Urantia book suggests that he started revealing more about the real nature of the kingdom of God.
Which I'm guessing wasn't what most people were expecting back then.
Not even close. They were looking for a military leader, someone to kick out the Romans, establish a physical kingdom.
Right. It was a very politically charged time. So how does Jesus navigate that? While also trying to introduce this whole new spiritual understanding.
That's where those parables come in. He uses these vivid stories to sneak in some really deep truths.
So instead of saying, hey guys, forget about conquering armies and political power, he's like, imagine a tiny mustard seed growing into this massive tree. That's what the kingdom of God is like.
Exactly. It's not about outward displays of force. It's about this inner transformation that spreads out from within.
I like that. It's like, don't underestimate the power of small beginnings.
Right. And he goes on to explain that the kingdom of God isn't confined by borders or political systems. It's about living by these spiritual principles, like love, compassion, forgiveness.
The stuff that actually changes the world from the inside out.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Even as he's painting this picture of a spiritual kingdom, he's also warning his disciples that it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, there's that whole taking up your cross thing.
Right. And in these private teachings, he's really drilling down on that. He's telling them to watch out for hypocrisy, to stay true to themselves, even when things get tough.
It's like he knows they're about to face some serious tests of faith.
Absolutely. And all of this leads us to that pivotal moment at Caesarea-Philippi. You know the one?
Oh, yeah. The big, who do you say that I am?
That's the one. Imagine this Jesus and his disciples. They're away from the crowds, surrounded by this stunning natural beauty.
It's a scene from a movie.
Right. And in that setting, he asks that question that's echoed through history.
Who do you say that I am?
And of course, it's Peter, always the bold one, who steps up and says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God."
Mic drop moment right there.
Right. But the Urantia book makes it clear that this isn't just some random guess on Peter's part. It's presented as a genuine revelation, like God the Father himself is confirming who Jesus is.
So Peter's basically channeling the divine at that point.
In a way, yes. And the book suggests that it's those private teachings that have led Peter to this understanding. He's starting to grasp the true nature of Jesus' identity, his mission.
It's a huge turning point for the disciples. They've gone from seeing him as a wise teacher to recognizing him as something far greater.
It's like the scales have fallen from their eyes. But here's where the Urantia book gets even more interesting. It suggests that even after this incredible declaration, they still don't fully get it.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Even after Peter's big confession?
Even then, they're still grappling with the implications of Jesus' divinity.
So they're human.
Exactly. And that's a key theme that the Urantia book keeps coming back to, spiritual understanding. It's not a one-and-done deal. It's a journey, a process of growth and discovery.
You're never really done learning and evolving.
Right. And I think that's true for us today, too. We're all on this journey of trying to understand the divine to figure out what it means for our lives.
So true. So what happens next in this story? How does Jesus handle the disciples', still kind of limited understanding? So they're starting to get it, but they don't totally get it. What happens next?
Well, Jesus, he starts to lay it out there more explicitly.
Like spelling it out for them.
Kind of, but he also starts preparing them for a future without him physically there.
It's like that point in a movie where things start moving really fast.
Right, like no more holding back.
So what kind of teachings are we talking about here?
Well, there's this really powerful passage where he talks about building a house on a rock versus on sand.
Ah, the classic metaphor.
Right. But the way he uses it, it's about more than just physical foundations. It's about building your life on something solid.
On spiritual principles.
Yeah.
On faith that can weather any storm.
Exactly. And he connects it to action, too.
It's one thing to talk the talk, but you got to walk the walk.
Exactly. And then there's that whole thing about service.
Oh, yeah. The whoever wants to be great must be a servant bit.
It's such a radical concept, even today.
Right. We're so used to associating leadership with power and authority.
But Jesus flips that on its head. He's saying true leadership is about humility, about putting others first.
About using your power to lift people up, not lord it over them.
Exactly. And the Urantia book takes it a step further, suggesting that Jesus is also talking about serving God.
So it's not just about how we treat each other, but also about aligning ourselves with a higher purpose.
Surrendering to the Father's will.
Letting go of that ego-driven need for control. That's a tough one.
It is, but that's where that whole concept of spiritual rebirth comes in.
Oh, yeah. The born-again thing?
Right. But the Urantia book makes it clear that Jesus isn't talking about some kind of literal rebirth. It's about a transformation of consciousness.
Like hitting the reset button on your whole way of thinking and being.
Exactly. Letting go of old patterns and beliefs that no longer serve you.
Shedding that old skin. Stepping into a new way of being.
A way of being that's rooted in love, compassion, connection with the divine.
It's a powerful message. And it feels super relevant to what a lot of people are going through these days.
Totally. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway here?
Yeah. What can we take from the Urantia book's perspective on these pivotal moments in Jesus' life?
Well, I think it reminds us that spiritual growth is a journey, not a destination.
It's not about achieving some kind of perfect faith overnight.
It's about showing up day after day, asking questions, wrestling with doubts.
Being open to new ways of seeing things, even when it's uncomfortable.
Embracing the messiness of it all.
And trusting that through that process, we're becoming more aligned with our true selves.
And with the divine.
Beautifully said. And with that, we'll leave you to ponder these ideas.
Until next time, keep diving deep.